I still remember the moment I found the diary. It was tucked away at the back of her closet, behind a pile of old sweaters I'd never bothered to look through before. The box was dusty, and the leather cover of the diary looked worn as if it had been carried around for years. I wasn't snooping, at least. That's what I told myself at first, but something about it drew me in. Maybe it was the way it was hidden, or how she'd always been so secretive about what she was reading lately. I sat on the edge of our bed, the air thick with the scent of her perfume and the faint aroma of lavender from her pillow spray. My hands trembled as I flipped it open. Her handwriting was neat, but the words inside hit me like a punch to the gut. I started reading the entries, one after another, and the more I read, the colder my stomach felt. It wasn't just a teenage crush or some innocent flirt. No, these entries painted a story I didn't want to believe. She wrote about how she met someone, my best friend, just days before our wedding. She called him dangerous, exciting, and the one that got away. There were details about secret meetings, late-night calls, and quick kisses that left her breathless, or so she said. Yeah, I know. It sounds like a bad soap opera, but the words were real. Too real. I remember the way my hand clenched the diary so tightly, my knuckles turning white. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it if she walked into the room. My finger traced the line that said, "It's just a fling, nothing serious. Just one of those stupid mistakes you forget about once the wedding's over." That was her excuse, and I guess she believed it, but I didn't. No way. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she look at me in the eye and say it was harmless? My mind raced. Was this just a one-time thing, or had it been going on longer? And what did my best friend know? Or worse, did he know I knew? The thought made my skin crawl. I sat there clutching the diary like a weapon. My mind spun with questions and rage. I wanted to smash something. I wanted to scream. But mostly I wanted to know the truth. As I stared at the pages, I felt a realization settle deep inside me. This wasn't just some careless fling. It was betrayal. My wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone, had slept with my best friend right before our wedding, and she had the nerve to lie about it. I knew then that this wasn't going to end with just hurt feelings and tears. I had to do something. The betrayal ran too deep, and I wasn't the kind of guy to let this slide. But I also needed a plan, something calculated, something that would hit back hard without leaving me looking like a lunatic. The first step was obvious. I had to confront her, but not just yet. I needed proof, a way to show her I was serious, something stronger than just words. The diary was a start, but I needed more. I needed to make her realize I wasn't going to be played for a fool. As I closed the diary, my hands still trembling, I thought about the next move. How do you go on after discovering something so raw? How do you face her? I could feel the fire building inside me, that bitter mixture of hurt and anger ready to explode. Later that night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. My stomach twisted and my palms grew slick with sweat. Every breath I took was like inhaling poison. I could hear her moving around the house, probably unaware she'd been caught. But I knew I wasn't just going to forget. No, I was going to make her pay for this. Just how, I wasn't sure yet. But the plan was forming, and I knew this was only the beginning. That diary was my first clue. The first piece of a puzzle I wasn't going to let go of. Because when someone betrays you like this, you don't just walk away. You make them regret it. And that's exactly what I was going to do. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't just confront her blindly. She'd deny everything, spin her stories, or worse, turn it around on me. I needed to be smarter. I started planning my move, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. I had to gather evidence, something irrefutable that would leave no room for her to deny or manipulate her way out. Over the next few days, I kept my eyes open. I kept looking for signs, anything that would confirm what I already knew deep down. I watched her every move, noticed her nervous glances when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She was jittery, more secretive than usual. I was patient, collecting my thoughts and planning. If she was hiding something, I needed to catch her in the act, or at least have undeniable proof. One evening, I decided to check her phone. I know sounds invasive, but I was desperate. I didn't want some half-truth or a staged confession. I wanted facts. I waited until she was in the shower, hair wrapped in a towel, and I snuck into her room. Her phone was on the bedside table, blinking with notifications. I hesitated for a second, then grabbed it and unlocked it. Her password was simple, something she'd told me once, and I knew it. Scrolling through her messages, I found nothing yet. But then I saw a photo. Not just any photo, one she'd taken from our vacation last summer, but there in the background was her phone's timestamp and a message thread open. The message was from my best friend. His name popped up and the last message was, "Can't wait to see you tonight." My stomach clenched. My fingers froze on the screen. I stared at the message, raw disbelief flooding me. She'd been planning to meet him that night, or perhaps she had already, while I was blissfully unaware. I felt my jaw tighten. I had what I needed, proof. Concrete, undeniable evidence of her lies and betrayal. This wasn't some vague suspicion anymore. This was real, and it was right there in my hand. That night I kept the phone on the dresser, my mind racing with anger and a strange sense of cold resolve. I knew what I had to do next. The confrontation wouldn't be long in coming. I wanted her to know I'd found out, that I wasn't going to be played anymore. But I also knew that I couldn't just throw this in her face and expect her to break down. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal, so I crafted a plan. I left her a note, simple, direct, telling her I knew the truth. I didn't mention the diary or the phone. I wanted her to panic, to realize I'd been watching her every move. I left the note on her pillow and went to bed, waiting for her reaction. I didn't sleep much that night. My stomach was in knots and every sound in the house made me flinch. By morning, I could feel her presence in the house. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. When she finally came into the room, her face was pale, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. I kept my expression cold, unreadable. "You've been lying to me," I said quietly, holding up her phone. "I found this, and your diary. Tell me what the hell is going on." Her face crumpled and her hands trembled. For a moment she looked like she'd break into tears, but then she mustered some false bravado. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "It's just a stupid mistake. It meant nothing. It was a fling and I was drunk. I swear I didn't mean for you to find out like this." I looked at her, feeling nothing but cold fury. "A mistake, really? You slept with my best friend just days before our wedding and you call it a mistake?" I clenched my fists, feeling my knuckles ache. "You lied to me from the start and now you want me to believe it was harmless." She broke down then, tears streaming down her face, but I felt nothing but disgust. I had to stay in control. This was only the beginning. I was going to make sure she paid for this betrayal in a way that she'd never forget. The plan was already taking shape. I wasn't going to rush into anything. No, I needed her to see what she lost, what she threw away. I had my evidence, my resolve, and the perfect opportunity to turn everything around. I just had to wait for the right moment. And when it came, she'd understand that I wasn't a fool. She kept begging, crying, trying to explain. But her words didn't matter anymore. I'd already made up my mind. It was time to act. The next few days were a blur of cold calculations and quiet vigilance. I didn't talk much, kept my face neutral whenever she looked my way. Inside, I was brewing a storm, carefully orchestrating a plan that would smash her lies and make her feel the weight of her betrayal. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I was going to make her realize she'd gone too far. That afternoon, I went out to buy a few things, something I'd been thinking about for a while. I stopped by a local hardware store and picked up a small recording device, one that I could hide easily. It was simple but effective. I also got a few other supplies, just enough to carry out my plan. I knew I had to catch her in the act, or, at the very least, record her admitting to what she'd done. Back home, I set everything up in the living room. I hid the device behind a potted plant near the couch, where I knew she'd have to pass by if she wanted to go to the kitchen or the hallway. I kept my phone nearby, ready to record any unexpected confession. My palms were sweaty, but my mind was clear. This was about ending her lies once and for all. Later that evening, she came out of her room looking tense, avoiding eye contact. I kept my tone calm but firm. "We need to talk. I've given you some time. Now I want to hear the truth from you, no more lies." She hesitated, then sat on the couch, nervously fidgeting with her hands. "I don't know what you want me to say," she whispered. "You already know everything." "Do I?" I pressed, watching her closely. "I want to hear it from you. Did you sleep with him, yes or no?" Her voice cracked. Yes, I did. I'm sorry, I was drunk and it was a mistake. Before I could even react, the device in the corner picked up her voice clearly. I pressed record, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and disgust. I'd always thought I'd be the one to walk away, to forgive and forget. But now I knew I wouldn't. Not after this. Her confession was raw and I let her speak. She rambled about how she'd been confused, how she loved me but was weak, how she didn't mean to hurt me. It was the same tired story I'd already heard from her. Diary, but what mattered now was what I'd caught, what I'd recorded. After she finished, I looked at her and said, "You lied to me for months. You made me believe I was crazy, that I was imagining things. Well, I've got proof now, and I'm done." She started crying again, begging me to forgive her, but I wasn't about to give her that, not anymore. I told her to pack her bags. I wanted her out of my house by the end of the night. Her face twisted with shock and anger, but I stayed cold. As she scrambled to gather her things, I knew this was only the beginning. I had everything I needed: her words, her betrayal, her shame. I had recorded her own voice admitting everything. It was over. When she finally left, I sat alone in the silence of my apartment, feeling a strange emptiness but also a strange relief. My stomach churned, but I felt lighter. I knew she was going to try to contact me, to manipulate or guilt me into taking her back. But I was done playing that game. I took a deep breath, then carefully backed up the recording onto my computer just in case. I printed out a copy of her diary entries along with the time-stamped photos from her phone. Everything was in place. I had evidence and I was ready to show everyone who she really was if I needed to. That night I sat in my favorite chair, staring at the recording on my phone. The words echoed in my mind. It was a mistake. Yeah, I thought, a mistake she'd regret for the rest of her life. I knew I'd be okay, but I also knew I'd never trust her again. Not completely. And I honestly didn't want to. I felt a strange sense of calm mixed with a hunger for justice. She deserved to feel the weight of what she'd done, and I was going to make sure she did. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. The house was silent except for the faint hum of traffic outside. I could still feel the weight of everything I'd uncovered: the diary, the phone, the recording. All proof of her lies, her betrayal. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands, which still felt slightly numb. I knew exactly what I was going to do next. First, I needed to plan my confrontation. It wasn't just about throwing the evidence in her face and walking away, though I wanted to do that. No, I wanted her to see the full extent of what she'd lost and what she'd done. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal as intensely as I did. But I also understood that any emotional outburst wouldn't serve my purpose. I had to be calculated. I rewatched the recording and read through her diary entries again. I needed to be prepared for any manipulation or denial. After all, she'd been a master at spinning stories. I couldn't let her gaslight me or make me doubt what I knew. This had to be about facts, cold and undeniable. Later that afternoon, I called her from a blocked number. She answered quickly, her voice already trembling. "What do you want?" "I want to talk," I said calmly. "Face to face. No more lies. I have everything I need, and I think you should hear it from me directly." There was a pause, then a hesitant sigh. "Fine. Come over, but I don't want any more accusations. Just talk." She wanted to pretend everything was normal, to act like nothing had changed, but I wasn't going to let her. I arrived at her place, feeling the familiar knot in my stomach tighten. I had my phone ready just in case. I walked through the door and she was there, nervous but trying to hold her composure. We sat in her living room, the air thick with tension. I kept my voice steady. "You lied to me. You lied about everything, about the fling, about how innocent it was. I've got proof. Your words, your own voice, her diary, the photos, I know everything." Her face paled and her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "You're overreacting. It was just a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I loved you." "Loving someone doesn't mean sleeping with your best friend, you stupid woman," I snapped, feeling the rage bubble up. "You betrayed me just days before our wedding. Do you know what that makes you?" She looked ready to cry again, but I pressed on. "You dragged me into this mess, thinking I'd never find out, but I did. And now I want the truth, straight and honest. Did you tell him about us? Did you plan this?" She hesitated, then finally nodded. "Yes, I told him I loved him. I wanted to see if he felt the same. It was stupid, I was confused, but I swear I never meant to hurt you. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the anger. You wanted to see if he felt the same, that's your excuse. That's what you call love, cheating on your fiancé, your supposed soulmate. She looked broken, like she wanted to crawl into a hole. I could see the guilt settling deep into her eyes. I didn't pity her, I just knew I had to finish what I started. I've recorded everything, I said, pulling out my phone and playing the recording. Her voice, admitting everything, filled the room. That's what I'll show everyone. Your lies, your betrayal. You thought I'd never find out. Well, I did. And I'm done with you. She burst into tears, crying out, please don't do this. I'll leave, I'll go wherever you want. Just don't ruin me, please. I stared at her, feeling a strange mixture of anger and emptiness. It's too late for that, I said coldly. You broke every promise. You hurt me more than I thought possible, and I'm not going to let you destroy what was left of my trust. You want to leave, fine, but don't expect me to ever forgive this. I stood up, grabbing her keys from the table. Here, your stuff. Pack your things and go. Don't try to contact me again. You've lost everything, my respect, my trust, and any chance of us being anything again. She sank to her knees, begging, but I didn't listen. I had made up my mind. I left her there, her sobs fading behind me as I stepped out into the cool air. The front door shut with a decisive click. I felt the weight lift from my shoulders, but a part of me was hollowed out. Walking away from her, I realized this was the end. No more lies, no more pretending. I'd rebuild my life from scratch. I knew I'd be okay. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was stronger than her lies. I had what I needed now, the truth. And that was enough. That night I went straight to my computer and compiled all the evidence. I made a folder titled The Truth with everything I'd collected. I printed out her diary pages, saved the recordings, and backed everything up to a secure location. Then I took her keys and dropped them into an envelope, sealing it with my final note, "You lost me forever." I walked to the mailbox, slipped it in, and watched as it disappeared inside. That's when it hit me. This was the final act. The end of our story. No turning back now. The betrayal was out in the open, and I was finally free from the cage of lies she'd built around us. My takeaway: sometimes the truth is the only revenge you need. The days that followed were a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I felt lighter, like I'd finally shed a heavy burden I hadn't even fully realized I was carrying. But at the same time, a gnawing sense of loss lingered. I kept replaying her crying face, her desperate pleas, and the sound of her voice admitting everything. It was harsh but necessary. I knew I had done what I needed to do. I stayed busy, focusing on rebuilding. I cut ties with her completely, blocked her number, deleted her from social media, and refused to listen to any calls or messages. I didn't want her to have that power anymore. I also told my close friends what had happened, not for sympathy, but to let them see the truth. I wanted to be transparent, to remind myself I wasn't the crazy one. One thing I didn't expect was how many people reached out to me afterward. Some friends, some colleagues, even a few who knew her well. Everyone had their own version of what she'd done. Some were angry, some felt sorry for me, but all of them agreed I'd dodged a bullet. That was comforting in a way, to have people see the story clearly. I didn't need her anymore. Not her lies, not her betrayal. But the aftermath wasn't just about what I'd been through. It was also about confronting the reality of what this meant for my future. I felt a strange mix of anger and clarity. I kept asking myself, why did I stay so long? How could I miss the warning signs? I'd ignored red flags, her secretive phone habits, her nervousness, the way she'd always deflected questions. I'd wanted to believe in her so badly I overlooked everything. In the quiet moments, I wondered if I could ever trust again. Would I be able to love someone without suspicion? Could I ever feel completely safe? The answers weren't immediate, but I knew one thing for sure: I'd never let someone hurt me like this again. I'd learned that trusting blindly was a recipe for disaster. One day, I sat down and drafted a letter to myself. It was raw, honest, and a reminder of what I'd been through. I told myself that I deserved better, that I'd find someone who valued honesty and loyalty. I promised I wouldn't settle for less next time. I also promised to be more aware, more cautious, and not to ignore warning signs out of fear of losing someone. It was therapeutic in a strange way. Writing that letter made me realize I was starting to put the pieces back together. I could see a future where I'd be cautious but open, guarded but not bitter. I had to let go of the anger, but I would forget what I'd learned. The most important thing was to protect my heart moving forward. I also realized I needed to take care of myself physically and emotionally. I started working out, went for long walks, and took up new hobbies. I wanted to reclaim my life piece by piece. The pain was still there, but it was fading, replaced gradually by a sense of empowerment. I finally felt like I was in control again. Looking back, I know this isn't a story with a happy ending, at least not in the traditional sense, but it's a story of survival. I survived her betrayal, and I refused to let it define me. It's a brutal lesson, but a necessary one. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. My advice to anyone reading this who's been through something similar: trust your gut. Don't ignore the red flags just because you're afraid of losing someone. And when you find out the truth, don't hesitate, act. Gather your evidence, confront them, and don't let anyone manipulate you into doubting yourself. The pain is real, but so is your strength. You are more resilient than you think. And as for me, I'm still healing, still learning to trust again, but I'm moving forward. The betrayal was a chapter, hard and painful, but it's not the end. There's a future waiting, and I intend to face it with my eyes open. Because in the end, being betrayed taught me what I truly deserve. Would you like me to continue with the final part? The day I finally closed that chapter, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief mixed with a quiet, steady resolve. It was a brutal, exhausting journey, but I knew I had taken back control of my life. I packed up her belongings, each item a reminder of the betrayal: her clothes, the gifts she'd given me, even the little things that once meant so much. I put everything into a box, sealed it tightly, and took it straight to the trash. That was my way of saying goodbye, of severing all ties. Then I went to my lawyer and filed the papers for the official separation. I handed over the keys to the apartment on a cold, clear morning. Her name was no longer on the lease. I wanted nothing left of her in my life. No echoes, no reminders, just a clean break. The act felt freeing, almost symbolic, like I was purging the last bits of her from my existence. I remember sitting in my car after I'd handed over the keys, staring at the empty street. My hands were cold, but my heart was strangely calm. I realized that I'd finally done what I needed to do, not just to get revenge, but to reclaim my dignity. My trust had been shattered, yes, but I was still here, still standing. That night I reflected on everything: the pain, the lies, the betrayal. I thought about how I'd almost lost myself in the process, but had managed to find my way back. I knew I'd face moments of doubt and loneliness, but I also knew I'd come out stronger. I'd learned that sometimes you have to burn everything to the ground to build something better from the ashes. The biggest lesson I took from all this was simple: don't ignore the warning signs. Don't let anyone diminish your worth or make you doubt your instincts. Love, trust, and honesty aren't optional. They're the foundation of any relationship. If they're broken, it's better to walk away than to stay and get hurt again. Looking around now, I see a future that's mine to shape. I no longer carry the weight of her betrayal, and I refuse to let it define me. I'm rebuilding my life, better, wiser, more cautious. I've learned that revenge isn't about revenge anymore. It's about reclaiming yourself, about knowing your worth. So to anyone stuck in a similar nightmare, here's my final word: trust yourself. Face the truth, no matter how painful. Gather your evidence, stand your ground, and don't be afraid to walk away. Because in the end, your happiness depends on your ability to recognize your worth and protect it fiercely. I closed the door on that chapter, but I know I'm only just beginning. The future is uncertain, sure, but I'm ready for it, stronger, wiser, and more aware. Because sometimes losing everything is the only way to truly find yourself.